Sometimes, the greatest danger doesn't come from strangers, but from those who we hold close to our hearts. Iffeh and Bukky had always been close. Growing up in the small town of Oba, their bond was admired by everyone who knew them. Iffeh, the older by 2 years, was naturally protective of her younger sister. Their parents often boasted about how well their daughters looked out for each other, especially Iffeh, who seemed to take the role of the older sister very seriously. From the beginning, there was a stark difference between them. Iffeh was sharp, intelligent, and excelled in school. Teachers often praised her, calling her a brilliant child with a bright future ahead. Her grades were impeccable, and she moved through her classes with ease. Bukky, on the other hand, struggled in school. She tried her best, but no matter how much effort she put in, her grades never matched her sister's. At first, Bukky didn't mind. She was happy to see Iffeh succeed, and she admired her sister's brilliance. But as the time passed, things changed. Their parents began to compare them openly. "Look at Iffeh," their mother would say. "She's doing so well in school. Bukky, why can't you be like your sister?" Each comparison hurt Bukky like 1,000 needles. No matter how much she loved Iffeh, it hurt to be constantly reminded that she wasn't good enough. Slowly, the admiration she felt for her sister changed into something darker: envy. Bukky found herself wondering why Iffeh always seemed to have it easy. Why was Iffeh always praised while she was criticized? Even though Bukky tried to push these thoughts away, they festered in the corners of her mind, growing stronger as the years passed. Every time Iffeh succeeded, Bukky felt herself slipping into jealousy. And though she continued to smile and play the role of the younger sister, her heart was filled with bitterness. By the time they were both in secondary school, the tension between them had become palpable, even though neither of them would admit it. Bukky found herself resenting Iffeh for the attention she received. She began to try harder, studying late into the night, joining school activities, even trying to impress their parents with small accomplishments. But no matter what she did, Iffeh was always one step ahead. Always brighter, always better. And so, Bukky's jealousy turned into something more sinister. She began to have dark thoughts about Iffeh, thoughts that she would never dare to say out loud. Thoughts of wishing her sister would fail, that something would happen to tarnish the perfect image everyone seemed to have about her. The years flew by, and soon, Iffeh and Bukky were both in the university. Iffeh was studying medicine, a prestigious course that made her parents beam with pride. Bukky, who had finally scrapped through secondary school, was studying business administration at a different university, though she had little interest in it. The gap between their accomplishments only seemed to widen, and so did Bukky's jealousy. While Iffeh was excelling in her studies, Bukky was struggling to keep up. She found herself overwhelmed, and instead of focusing on her academics, she sought comfort in the attention of boys. Bukky quickly gained a reputation on campus for her wild lifestyle. She attended parties, drank excessively, and slept around with different men, hoping that the validation from others would fill the growing emptiness inside of her. But no matter how much attention she got, it wasn't enough. She still couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy whenever she thought about Iffeh. Her sister's life seemed perfect. Iffeh was not only smart, but she was also beautiful and kind. She was loved by her classmates, respected by her professors, and adored by their parents. Bukky, on the other hand, felt like a failure. She had no direction, no purpose, and worst of all, no one seemed to care as much about her as they did about Iffeh. Her jealousy began to consume her, and she soon found herself growing more and more resentful towards her sister. even though Iffeh continued to treat her with love and support. One evening, while Bukky was home for a short holiday, she noticed that Iffeh was preparing for an important test. Iffeh had laid out her clothes for the next day and was in the kitchen studying. A twisted idea crept into Bukky's mind. She waited until Iffeh was distracted, then sneaked into her room and poured water over the clothes Iffeh had carefully ironed for the next day. When Iffeh discovered the wet clothes, she was confused, but she didn't suspect anything malicious. "I must have spilled something by accident," she said to Bukky, sighing as she rushed to find another outfit. Bukky's heart raced with a strange sense of satisfaction. It wasn't a grand act of sabotage, but it was enough to find her a fleeting feeling of power over her sister. And though she felt a pang of guilt for what had happened, it didn't stop her from doing other small things to make Iffeh's life more difficult in the future. The jealousy that had once been a mere undercurrent was now manifesting in Bukky's actions. And as time passed, those actions became more malicious. After university, Iffeh graduated with honors and secured a good job at a prestigious hospital. Her success didn't stop there. She soon met a man named Emeka, a fellow doctor who worked at the same hospital. Emeka was everything Iffeh could have ever wished for in a partner: kind, supportive, and deeply in love with her. Within a year, they were married, and Iffeh's life seemed perfect in every way. Bukky, on the other hand, had barely managed to finish her degree. Her academic performance had been mediocre at best, and she struggled to find a stable job. She moved from one temporary job to another, never feeling satisfied with where she was in life. The difference between her life and Iffeh's life was too obvious. While Iffeh was thriving, Bukky was floundering. Despite this, Iffeh continued to be a source of support for her younger sister. She sent Bukky money when she needed it, helped her with job applications, and even invited her over for dinner with her and Emeka. Iffeh never judged her sisters for her struggle, and in her mind, she was simply doing anything to help her sister, just like a loving older sister would do. But to Bukky, every gesture of kindness felt like a reminder of her own failures. She resented the fact that Iffeh had everything: a loving husband, a successful career, the admiration of their parents, while she had nothing. Bukky began to hate the way Iffeh's life seemed so effortless. Why did her sister always get what she wanted, while she had to scrape for the rest? One day, after another failed job interview, Bukky called Iffeh, crying about her situation. Without hesitation, Iffeh offered to help as usual. "Why don't you come stay with me and Emeka for a while?" Iffeh suggested. "You can get back on your feet, and I can help you with your job search." Bukky hesitated. She knew it wasn't a good idea. Living under the same roof as Iffeh would only make her more resentful. But as at the time, Bukky couldn't ignore the practical benefits. She had no money, no job, and no other options. "Okay," Bukky finally agreed. "I'll stay with you." And so, Bukky moved into Iffeh and Emeka's house, hiding her bitterness beneath a polite smile. But deep down, the jealousy and resentment that had festered for years were growing darker and more dangerous. The first night in Iffeh's home, Bukky could barely sleep. She lay awake in the guest room, thinking about Iffeh and Emeka's perfect life. The house was beautiful, filled with love and warmth, and every corner seemed to radiate the success and happiness that Bukky lacked. Late in the night, she crept downstairs, feeling restless. As she reached the living room, she saw Emeka sitting on the couch, reading a book. He looked up when he saw her. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his tone friendly. Bukky gave him a small smile and walked over to sit beside him. "Yeah, I guess I'm not used to this new environment yet." Emeka nodded and returned to his book. But Bukky wasn't ready to leave. She sat there in silence, watching him, a strange idea forming in her mind. She wondered what would happen if she could take away something that mattered from Iffeh, something that could shatter her perfect life. And in that moment, Bukky decided to test her boundaries. "I must say, Iffeh is really lucky to have you," Bukky said, her voice soft and sweet. Emeka looked at her, clearly not expecting such a comment. "Well, I'm lucky to have her too." Bukky smiled, her gaze lingering on him a little too long. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You're a good man, Emeka. Iffeh is so lucky, but maybe someone else might appreciate you more." Emeka's face darkened. He set his book down and turned to face her, his expression cold. "Bukky, don't do this." Bukky blinked, pretending to be innocent. "Do what?" "You know exactly what you're doing," Emeka said, his voice low and stern. "I don't know what's going on in your head, but let me make it clear. I love Iffeh, and nothing you say or do will change that. You may be her sister, but I can see through you, Bukky. I know you're not here with good intentions." Bukky's heart raced, and for a moment, she was caught off guard by his bluntness. She hadn't expected Emeka to call her out directly, especially not so soon. She tried to play it off with a nervous laugh, but Emeka's expression didn't soften. He stood up from the couch, towering over her. "Iffeh may not see it, but I do, Bukky," Emeka said quietly. "You are so full of jealousy and bitterness, and I'm warning you, Bukky. Stay away from me and stop whatever it is you're planning. If you love your sister at all, you will leave before you destroy the one person who has always been there for you." With that, he left the room, leaving Bukky alone in the darkened living room, her mind spinning. She had miscalculated. Emeka wasn't as easily manipulated as the boys she had toyed with back in school. He wasn't going to fall for her games. And now, he had made it clear to her that he was on to her. But instead of backing down, Bukky's anger flared. How dare he speak to her like that? How dare he accuse her of being jealous? He didn't understand what it was like to live in Iffeh's shadow, always being compared, always feeling like the lesser sister. Emeka's rejection only deepened her resentment, and now her thoughts were even darker. If Emeka wouldn't play along, then she would find another way to hurt Iffeh. And this time, it wouldn't be as simple as sabotaging her clothes or making snide comments. No, Bukky was ready to take things to the next level, and she would do it in whatever way it took for her to bring her sister's perfect life crashing down. As the weeks passed, Bukky's bitterness festered like a wound that refused to heal. She continued to live with Iffeh and Emeka, pretending to be grateful to her sister, while secretly plotting her next move. Every time, Emeka spoke kindly to Iffeh. Every time, they shared a tender moment. Bukky's jealousy grew more intense. She hated how happy they seemed, how effortless their love appeared to be. In her mind, Bukky began to craft a plan that would shatter Iffeh's perfect life once and for all. She knew that if she couldn't have Emeka, the least she could do was take him away from Iffeh. And so, Bukky started to think of ways to harm him. The idea of murder didn't come to her immediately. But once it did, she couldn't shake it. It was a dark, twisted thought that grew louder in her mind every day. She started researching ways to make Emeka's death look like an accident. Poison, perhaps, or a car crash. Bukky considered every option, mapping out different scenarios in her head, each one more elaborate than the last. She knew she had to be careful. If anything went wrong, it would lead back to her. But the more she thought about it, the more confident she became. She could do this. She could take everything from Iffeh, and no one would ever know. One evening, Bukky was in her room, texting a friend about the details of her plan. She had written something incriminating, outlining how she could slip poison into Emeka's food during dinner. As she was typing, Bukky didn't notice Iffeh standing outside the door, having come upstairs to ask her about something. Iffeh knocked softly on the door, but Bukky didn't hear her. Curious, Iffeh pushed the door open slightly, only to see her sister intensely focused on her phone. Before she could speak, her eyes caught sight of the message on Bukky's screen. I could put something in his food. It wouldn't take much, just enough to make it look like a heart attack. Iffeh wouldn't know what hit her. Iffeh's heart stopped. Her mind reeled, and for a moment, she couldn't process what she had just seen. She quietly stepped back from the door, her mind racing. Why was Bukky planning to harm Emeka? How could her own sister be capable of something so evil? Iffeh returned to her bedroom, her hands trembling as she held her phone. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't confront Bukky right away, but she also couldn't sit back and do nothing. The man she loved was in danger, and her sister was behind it. The next morning, Iffeh couldn't hold it back any longer. She had barely slept. The thought of Bukky's plan haunting her throughout the night. She decided to confront her sister and demand an explanation. After breakfast, when Emeka had left for work, Iffeh approached Bukky, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anger. Bukky, we need to talk. Bukky looked up from her phone, surprised by the tone in Iffeh's voice. What's going on? She asked innocently. I saw your messages, Iffeh said, her voice trembling. I saw what you're planning. How could you, Bukky? How could you even think about hurting Emeka? For a moment, Bukky's face went pale. But then again, her expression darkened. She had been caught, but instead of feeling remorse, she felt rage. Iffeh, Bukky began, her voice sharp. You don't understand anything. You never have. Iffeh was taken aback by the coldness in Bukky's voice. I don't understand, Bukky. You're my sister. How could you even think about doing something like this? Why would you want to hurt me like this? Bukky stood up, her fists clenched at her sides. Because you've always had everything, Iffeh. Every single thing. The perfect grades, the perfect job, the perfect man. I've always been in your shadow. Always the one who wasn't good enough. Do you know what that's like? To spend your entire life being compared to you? Iffeh's heart broke as she listened to her sister's words. She had always loved Bukky, always tried to support her. But now, she realized how deeply her sister had resented her for years. Bukky, I never meant to make you feel like that, she said, tears filling her eyes. I've always loved you. I've always wanted the best for you. Well, it's not enough, Bukky snapped. You may not have meant to, but you've ruined my life, Iffeh. Everything always comes so easily to you. Why I have to fight for every little thing? And now, I'm done pretending. I hate you. I actually hate you for having the life I've always wanted. Iffeh stood there, frozen in place, as her sister's words sank in. She had known that Bukky struggled with jealousy, but she had never imagined that it ran this deep. And now, face to face with her sister, she realized that she had lost her sister a long time ago. For a moment, there was only silence between them. Then Bukky's expression hardened. I won't stay here anymore. I can't stand being around you or your perfect life. With that, Bukky turned and walked out of the house, leaving Iffeh standing alone in the living room, her heart shattered by the depth of her sister's hatred. In the weeks that followed, Iffeh and Bukky's relationship was beyond repair. Bukky moved out, cutting off all contacts with Iffeh and Emeka. Though Iffeh was devastated by the loss of her sister, she knew that this was for the best, and she couldn't save someone who didn't even want to be saved. Iffeh and Emeka tried to move on, but the pain of Bukky's betrayal lingered. The bond between sisters that had once been so strong was now broken, leaving only the darkness of jealousy and resentment in its wake.